The Morality of Factory Farming by Malia Hutchins. Have you ever thought about where your meat comes from? Most people don't think about it as we're going through shopping through the grocery store for the week or cooking our dinners every night. Most people think that although factory farming is unfortunate, it's also unavoidable if we want to eat meat. Now, many philosophers think that this factory farming raises some moral concerns. These animals are kept in small, crowded environments and put in situations that prioritize efficiency over their welfare. Philosopher Alistar Norcross challenges factory farming through a thought experiment about a man who tortures animals. By comparing this thought experiment to how we get our meat, it challenges our food choices and if they are morally comparable and as unacceptable as this cruel situation he's describing through this thought experiment. Throughout this speech, we're going to explore Alistar Norcross' thought experiment and responses to common arguments and prove how factory farming is wrong. First, we're going to go through the Fred thought experiment. Now, this is a hypothetical situation given by Alistar Norcross to prove the cruelty of factory farming through comparison. So, for this experiment, imagine you're home and you're visiting, say, your parents. And you're home and you, at night, every night, you hear this awful sound. It sounds like someone's being hurt. You don't know what it is. And so you call the police, let's say the first night because you're super on it. And they go into your neighbor's house, so they find out it's from your neighbor. And they find that he has been torturing puppies in his basement and every night. And that's the noise you heard, was the puppies, say like these, being tortured every night in his basement. So his excuse is that the neighbor, that he was in a accident, car crash, and he had brain damage. So this damaged the part of his brain that allowed him to taste chocolate or be able to taste chocolate when he ate it. So he found through studies that had been done, he did research, that people have found that if you torture puppies and take the hormone that was released from them in their brain while they're tortured, then you can put it on your food and be able to taste chocolate again. So that is his explanation and reasoning, is because he can't taste chocolate and so he tortures these puppies to be able to taste the chocolate again. Now, is this a valid argument? Obviously not. This is not a valid argument. You should not torture puppies to taste something good, taste chocolate. So, therefore, the comparison part of this is, therefore, since it is not okay to torture the puppies to be able to taste something good, you cannot torture animals to taste something good, because that is the same thing that's happening with factory farming. These animals, like chickens, cows, pigs, they're being tortured so that we have something good to eat. And if you wouldn't do it to the puppies, you shouldn't do it to the farm animals, right? So scholars have noted that the factory farming is allowing widespread animal suffering because it's prioritizing that efficiency and economic production. It's prioritizing that over these animals' welfare. And so this conclusion, the thought experiment, the comparison of the Fred story to factory farming is a proof and support that factory farming is wrong. So first we went over the Fred thought experiment, and now we're going to go over 3 objections. And this is the first one. It's called indirect harm objection. So people with this belief think that since they are not torturing the animals themselves, the factory farmers are, they are not morally at fault. Since they aren't directly hurting these animals as opposed to the people at the farms, they aren't morally wrong. So in response to this, Norcross says that no, it is still wrong to buy the meat because the companies wouldn't be there without customers. So you're funding these companies' torture of animals. And even though it is an indirect, you're indirectly doing this, not directly like the factory farmers, this action has foreseen consequences. So when you buy the meat, you know that these animals are getting tortured because they're coming from the farms. So you're funding the companies and you're giving them the support and resources to torture these animals brutally. So this is still morally wrong. The second objection we're going to cover is the casual impotence objection. Now, this states that if one person stops eating meat to try to help the animals, that's not going to make a difference. Someone who believes this might say that whether or not they choose to eat meat, the same number of animals is going to be tortured and killed in the end. Now, Norcross's response to this is that the whole thing with mass change movements is that you have to be optimistic. He gives the examples of suffrage, equal rights, along with others, and says that yes, they had lots of supporters and people that made change, but they started out with a few people. So that's the whole thing with the movements, is they start out small and grow into big change. Now, he says that yes, sure, a few people might not make much change, but over time, those people are going to grow, and that's when the change will happen. The third objection is the rationality objection. Now, some people say that there's a fundamental difference between humans and animals, and this is that humans have rationality and animals do not. Now, this may mean that it is acceptable to harm animals for human pleasure because they lack the advanced mental capacities that we have. Now, Norcross's response to this is that it's the capacity to suffer, not rationality, that makes harming a being so wrong. He said, animals, no matter if they were raised on a farm or wherever they were raised, have the capacity to feel fear, pain, and distress like we do. And he also points out that never would we justify harming a less rational human, such as an infant or someone with severe cognitive disabilities, for pleasure, because obviously that's awful and wrong. So he says that this proves that rationality alone does not prove or equal someone's moral worth. In conclusion, Norcross's argument challenges the common practice of buying factory farmed meat. He poses a thought experiment that relates factory farming to a scenario that more people might feel more empathy or conviction towards. Through this thought experiment, he concludes that torturing animals for pleasure is similar to factory farming, which both of those are wrong. Then he responds to objections. He says that just because you're not causing direct harm, you're causing indirect harm, you still know the consequences going into that, and therefore that makes it morally wrong. He also said that the animal's capacity to suffer, not their rationale, is what makes harming someone wrong. And animals have the capacity to suffer, therefore it is wrong. He also says that even if a few people are not eating meat to try to help, it might not be making a difference, but that's no reason not to do it, because that few people over time is going to grow, and that is how change is made. Overall, Norcross's argument challenges us to think deeper about our daily food choices and where they're coming from. He prompts the question, can factory farming ever be justifiable?